So I thought that documentary about Berlin was a one-off, but evidently they did 3 of these. And we've got Paris the Crazy Years here, and it's just as degenerate as you would think it is. And it's the same exact thing. You've got the same people who went in and got everybody all stirred up doing crazy things, and they basically marketed sin. They marketed sin in the worst way, and then they collapsed the economy, and everybody went home and stopped being naughty, and then World War II came. In between World War I and World War II, they made a whole lot of money, spiritually and morally bankrupting Europeans. The same people. And they're doing that now. You guys know who I'm talking about. They're doing it now. It's the same exact thing. Europe is in the same trouble, right? Nobody seems to respect borders anymore. And yeah, you're just going to see a lot of stuff here that's very revealing as to what's going on today, just like with the Berlin one. Only this time I'm not going to pause it and interject. I'm just gonna do this now and get out of the way. 'Cause it's a lot better that way. But yeah, I don't have to hold your hand. You're definitely going to be able to tell what's going on here. So just strap in.
In the 20th century, a handful of cities became legendary. Art, culture, and life itself burned brighter there, flamed by a tolerance that allowed eroticism, permissiveness, and sin to flourish. And in the 1920s, one of the most sexually promiscuous sin cities in the world was the City of Light, Paris. Alice Prynne decided to change her name to Kiki. It didn't take long for the regulars along the Boulevard Montparnasse to gossip about Kiki's latest adventure.
Many people looked on her as a woman of the street. I think she came alive at night, so freely and openly and barely clad.
Kiki was used to nudity. As a model, she was a favorite of all the up-and-coming sculptors and painters of Paris. They all liked her, and if she liked them, then she would take them to bed. And if she really liked them, she'd move in with them and become their mistress.
The artist Fujita tells the story when she comes in to be painted by him. She takes off her coat and she's nude underneath completely. She was totally natural.
She talks about when she modeled for Fujita that he was fascinated by the fact that she didn't really have a lot of pubic hair, and he would come up and look very close and very funny, no hair. he liked that in her as a model. And she didn't wear underwear.
At night, Kiki would haunt the bars and clubs, prepared to help her down-and-out friends by exposing her breasts to tourists for a few francs. Or better still, a few American dollars.
Kiki was a free woman. She was the first feminist.
She was the first feminist.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
She was totally aware of herself. She didn't depend on anybody. She was a free woman who had intelligence.
And into this incredible cosmopolitan colony of talent came an aspiring avant-garde artist from Brooklyn. Manny Rudnitsky had already changed his name to Man Ray, and Paris would complete his transformation.
There's a long established tradition in French sexual life of what is called la partouze. It's a corruption. It means the dirty party. And the partouze is group sex, either between 3 people or 10 people or 100 people, what we would call an orgy.
Harry and Chris Crosby were probably the most flamboyant and certainly one of the richest couples in Paris.
Harry Crosby was a Boston blue blood, nephew to American tycoon J.P. Morgan. Caresse was a married woman with children when they met. Their affair and subsequent marriage scandalized Boston. They came to Paris to escape and to fulfill their literary dreams.
Harry Crosby was a writer and publisher and founder of the Black Sun Press, and a famously decadent guy who had an apartment where there was a skeleton standing at the foot of the stairs with a dish full of condoms for visitors when they came to parties at his house.
Jazz clubs started springing up in Montmartre. Paris had a long tradition of welcoming foreign musicians, of welcoming exotic music, and jazz was in many ways the latest kind of music to be welcomed. But jazz, as far as the French were concerned, was black music, and so it had to be played by black musicians to be legitimate, to be really genuine. And yet there was a real shortage of these musicians.
The call went out back in America. Paris was looking for jazz musicians, and whites need not apply. But in France, they found themselves treated as objects of desire.
All of them had white girlfriends. Some of them married the women, but all of them had white girlfriends, which of course would have been impossible back home.
One of the things that was so scandalous for Americans about Paris, so unusual, was the fact that there was this kind of racial mixing, that the color line that was drawn in the United States didn't exist in Paris. And that was especially true with regard to affairs of the heart and sex between blacks and whites. And that's one of the things about Paris in the 1920s. You had this blurring of worlds.